All right, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for being on the show today. We've got AJ, a good friend of mine up in Kelowna, badass agent. AJ, just quickly, your story. You went from, what was it, 800,000 GCI to like 5 million GCI in the span of like 12 months or something crazy. You want to maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, it wasn't quite that impressive, but so in 2007, 8, I had a team and we were doing 500, 600, we were doing 100 deals. So the average deal was smaller then, but we were doing about 100 deals. And then I had kind of floundered in this space of just kind of expecting people to learn from me by osmosis. And I didn't have a lot of systems and that. Then I met my COO, which is Michael Plowman, and he came into my business and we just systemized, created procedures, and created sort of duplicatable systems that we could train our agents on. And from there, it just exploded. And after a couple of years, we doubled our business year after year for about 4 years straight. And now we're doing about $1 million in GCI a month. So it's been a fun little journey.
Holy moly.
Yeah, last year was a record year for us. And this year looks like it's going to blow the doors off last year. So.
Wow. So you like injected steroids in your business. So AJ, maybe walk us through sort of like the history of kind of going from, you were a high producing agent, probably to start off with a team, floundered a little bit, had some success. So maybe walk us through kind of the early days and then what kind of clicked for you and what you needed to do to get to this next level.
Yeah, for me, I mean, in the early days, I was able to attract people into the business quite easily just because, we had created a flashy brand. People kind of saw a young guy doing well and they wanted to be around it, but there wasn't anything transferable there. There wasn't anything coachable. There wasn't anything that I could really use to get someone and make them successful. And so, we spent a fair amount of time just with a revolving door of agents coming, joining the team, joining the brokerage, but not really getting any traction. So it wasn't until we created value propositions to the marketplace. We had, a very specific value proposition to buyers, one for sellers, and then we created a value proposition for agents, which was a career path where you came in, you got trained, you started as an associate, then you made partner, then you made senior partner, and there was an actual career trajectory. We just got serious about a value proposition to all the major stakeholders. And once we had that figured out, we had a sustainable model that, not only did it attracted lots of clientele into the business, but it kept agents inside our ecosystem. They didn't just come learn from us for a couple of years and then take off, which is the kind of the main thing that plagues most team leaders, is that you feel like you're just training people to go and become your competition. And so what we did was we focused on creating a model where there was no greener grass, right? And that's been our just obsession, is trying to figure out. And so, our senior partners that I talk about, we these are major stakeholders in our business. They get a little bit of profit sharing. And, we talk to them on a monthly basis and we ask them, like, is there a breakdown in the model somewhere? How can we leverage you guys further? What can we do to give you a better work-life balance? How can we create a system where you guys actually get to experience the true promise of this business, where you can be home at night with your kids, you can have weekends to do the things that you enjoy, and still operate at the highest possible level, doing 70, 80, even 100 transactions a year, making that 400 or 500K a year net money, and sane amount of work, right? And so that's just become our obsession, is trying to serve our agents now so they can hit that that utopian sort of space of having that work-life balance.
I remember when I visited you up in Kelowna a few years ago, and we visited your operation, and it was, you literally had departments and systems for everything. Mm-hmm. So maybe break down how your business is structured, because you run it as a brokerage, mm-hmm. but you're kind of running it more like a team would, like a traditional team. So maybe explain that concept to everybody.
Sure. Yeah. It's a teamerage, really. So we've got 15 frontline real estate agents. In support of that, we have 4 licensed inside sales agents. So all the inbound calls, all the inbound leads come into the ISAs, right? And then at the front desk, we've got our lead coordinator. So she's database manager, making sure that sort of that first impression with the leads, making sure speed to lead is followed, all those things. So that's our lead coordinator. She also sits at the front desk. And then we've got the marketing department. They handle all the marketing collectively for everyone. So everybody submits to the idea that pooling our marketing resources is better than everybody having their own, $1,000, $2,000 a month marketing plan and just making little bits of noise. We're one cohesive message, and we're spending, close to 100 grand a month on that one message, which is what gives you the frequency, and that's what gives you the reach in order to actually make some waves in your marketplace. So everybody submits to the idea that Vantage has the marketing department. You don't have to worry about marketing. They submit to the idea that my inside sales agents are better prospectors than them. And so that all the leads are better, both inbound and outbound leads are better served by the ISAs. And so they're in a situation where they handle only the meat, the middle, the consultative portion of the real estate deals. There's a licensed transaction management team that takes the deal from contract to close as well. And so the agents, they see themselves as consultants. They get a consulting fee. It's a flat fee based on the cost per sale that works for us to build a scalable business. And they don't really concern themselves with the price point of the homes, or the price point of the clientele they're serving. They're getting their flat fee per deal, right? And so you've got, like I say, the first portion, the prospecting is handled by one department, the consultants handle their service period, and then you've got the transaction management team that makes sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And so the administrative team is quite large. We've got client care, we've got transaction management, we've got listing coordinators. There's 8 in total servicing those 15 frontline agents. So basically, for every 2 agents, you need 1 admin in our model. But the amount of brokerage level or team level services that we're offering allows agents to sell 5, 6, 7 homes every month, and we build a team around them. So in support of them, you've got licensed showing agents. So the top producers, once you hit 5 deals a month on average, you start getting access to certain bits of leverage, like having access to a showing assistant who can help you be in 2 places at once, right? And you've got somebody that's managing your center of influence for you and doing client care and keeping that database percolating and all that. So it's if I had to summarize our model, it's about leverage. It's about leveraging our agents so that they can reach that highest dollar per hour
activity.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found really fascinating, AJ, was some of the creative splits that you'd created with your agents. Do you mind sharing that a little bit? Like you have different levels that people can hit, and you have kind of a flat fee system. I don't know if that's still what you're running, but I was really intrigued by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we do the flat fee on the team generated business. So if you've got something that comes through the inside sales, that flat fee is kind of based on, we want our marketing, the cost of sale to the inside sales, and the flat fee to not exceed the 50% mark. I think where most people get messed up in building a team is they pay for all the expenses and they give 50 points on the team generated stuff. It's tough to build a scalable business that way because you don't have the resources to hire the help you need. You don't have the resources to do the marketing you need, because 50% to the brokerage end really just isn't enough if you're providing all those additional services. So the flat fee is kind of based around 35% cost of sale, because that allows you to have 5% to the ISAs and 10% for marketing, right? So roughly whatever your average deal is, 35% of that's roughly where our flat fee lands. And then on the center of influence stuff, they get 50% on that, but there's these little bonus thresholds. So if they maintain a 3 team generated deal average, the second center of influence deal they do in a month, where they do 5 deals, would be exempt of a split. So that would actually mean they're getting, a bonus of, the whole amount of that commission. So it might be a $12,000 commission, for example. So those bonus months are really exciting, and agents strive really hard to maintain their 3 deal average, which is where our major profit center is, right? So if we can keep people in that space of wanting to maintain that 3 deal average, and those COI bonuses, center of influence bonuses, tend to really land well for these guys. If they can hit bonus 2-3 times a year, it takes their center of influence split from 50-50 to, more like 70-30, right?
Right. Awesome. So, I mean, one of the things as you scale a business, right, trying to keep that culture of the early days where you probably had your early group that you guys were close knit, how have you maintained that level of culture in your business as you've grown to the levels you're at? I mean, how many total people are working in Vantage West now?
Total, including the property management division, we're 40.
40.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing for us in maintaining the culture has been having a very narrowly defined set of values that we hire and fire by. And so once you're clear on what those values are, then you make sure that everybody fits the mold before they join. And, you know, we've let top producers carry on because they weren't a value fit. They weren't finding joy in their work. They weren't a pleasure to be around. You know, joy for us is one of the really, really most highly kind of guarded values. If, you know, you can do 10 deals a month, but if you're a pain in the ass, it's just at the end of the day, you're going to make two people doing 3-4 deals a month miserable. You can't build a culture on that. So we've gotten really serious about making sure we got the right butts in the right seats. You know, when we hire somebody, even on the administrative side, we'll take a long time to hire somebody. Our process is almost painfully slow, but we want to make sure that they've been vetted, that everybody on the leadership team has had a chance to weigh in on the decision. We've really done a deep dive into their values, their personality type, their work style. There's a number of things. So yeah, we don't grow super fast and scale super fast where we just bring everybody in if they can fog a mirror. We're really quite choosy when it comes to who can join the team. And I think that's been the reason why we've been able to protect our culture as we've grown.
Right. If you could go back in time, AJ, and give yourself some advice, what you've learned over the years, what would that piece of advice be? What's the thing that you kind of learned the hard way?
Yeah, that's a good question. The biggest probably thing is to be humble enough to know that if you're a great realtor, you're a great promoter, a great salesperson, you're probably not a great operator. And you need to find that into your yang. There's somebody to make it go and somebody to make it stick, right? And so the book that I read that changed my paradigm was a book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman. He wrote Traction as well. Traction's great if you're looking for like an entrepreneurial operating system for your business. But Rocket Fuel is all about the symbiotic relationship between a visionary and an integrator. And most of us on this call are visionaries. Few of us are both. You might actually be one of the rare freaks that's both a visionary and an integrator, because you seem to have both in my mind. But most of us are just like off the chart visionaries, which means we're terrible at the integration side. And so when you hire that integrator, and I was fortunate enough to do that in 2012, and that's really where the explosive growth came from, is once there was somebody to make my ideas stick and somebody who could actually uphold the standard and who was truly good and gifted in that space of like creating simple systems of accountability and upholding those systems, that's when it can take off. So going back, I wouldn't waste the 5 years I spent being, you know, just too maybe egotistical to realize that I needed the help.
That's such good feedback. I hope that you guys are hearing that, because AJ, you are the visionary, right? You came up with this concept and had these great things. But like you were saying, in the early years, you felt like you had maybe more of a revolving door because you didn't have the stickiness. Mm-hmm. And so when you teamed up, sorry, what was your business partner's name that you teamed up with?
Michael Plowman. How
did that come about? Like, how did you find someone that you're like, this is the guy that's going to help me put the systems in play and take this company to the next level? How did you get that? Because that's not an easy person to find.
Yeah, it's not. The book Traction or Rocket Fuel will tell you how to find that person. But how I came to find him was interesting. He had a coaching company called Plowman Team Systems. He had helped his dad, Dan Plowman, build the largest real estate team in the Ontario Real Estate Board. So they were a going concern back in 2010, 11, and they created a coaching company. And I was one of their $35,000 a year coaching clients. I had gone to the summit in Niagara Falls and fallen in love with what they were doing. They were doing the only coaching for teams at that time. And so Michael wasn't my coach, but in the second trip out to Niagara, he and I had a night out where we went to the casino and had a few pops together and sort of just explaining things. And he let me know that he wasn't sure if he was going to stay working with his dad. And so what I had the opportunity to do at that point was plant the seed to say, well, I'm really enjoying your systems, even though you're not the one teaching them to me. Would you want to come out west and check it out, see what we've got going on? Maybe there's a consulting gig we can do together. So he came over on a 3-month consulting gig, which was, I was going to pay him a pretty hefty amount for that. We finished the 3 months, and then I just, managed to charm him into staying. And he commuted back and forth from Toronto every other week from 2012 to basically till when we hit lockdown last March.
Wow.
And now we're doing it all remote and it's all good. And he's probably wondering why he spent over 100 grand on flights, but but it's been good. Yeah. So that's how I found the yin to my yang. I just stole my coach.
Love it. Love it. Hey, why not? Right.
Yeah.
So what did you, okay, for me, we had a lot of learning that we gained from the pandemic last year, right? When we had to like literally overnight shut down the office and operate virtually. What are some of the things that you learned in the last year from having to kind of make adjustments in your business?
One thing for me personally, as a team leader, I learned that my presence physically is actually not required. I got to spend four of the last 5 months I've been gone. We were in Arizona, we were in Mexico, we were in Hawaii, bouncing around, and I got to spend some time with my little baby girl. And but as long as I'm there for the key cornerstone things like the team meetings where we're appreciating our people and doing those things, and I'm there for the monthly check-in call with them where I look at their business plans and spend some time with them. Those are the cornerstone things that they need me for. And then obviously I'm driving the vision, but I can do that from anywhere. Moving the pieces on the board, I can do from anywhere. I don't need to be physically in the office or even physically in the city that I live in order to do that. So that was a big thing I learned. The other thing that obviously I learned, and anybody that's at EXP will appreciate this, but bricks and mortar isn't as much as it was cracked up to be in terms of the necessity to be all under one roof. You can still create a camaraderie, you can still create a culture without the brick and mortar presence. So that's an interesting thing, because we were about to build a massive new office for ourselves, and we may still, but I'll have to rethink how we do it, because everybody having their own 7x7 office is not important anymore. Right. So it'll be more of like a place for us to get together. It'll be maybe amenity rich, a place there you want to leave your house to go to that place, but not because you want a 7x7 cubicle to crank out calls.
Yeah, good perspective there. So AJ, you run an independent brokerage, right? And interestingly enough, AJ actually referred me one of his friends recently to say, hey, come, somebody's coaching, you should do this EXP thing. So obviously you understand the model a little bit, right? So when you think about like the future of real estate, and if you were to say start your company today, what are some of the pros and cons that you see with the cloud-based models versus the independent models? Either way, I'd love to just hear your thoughts, good or bad.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of respect for the business model of EXP and the brilliant financial engineering that's been done in order to create the stock value you guys have seen. And that part's cool. I definitely have FOMO missing out on the stock appreciation for sure. But yeah, I think the future of real estate is digital. There's no question. And I think that for us, part of my expansion plan for Vantage would be a Vantage Digital, which would borrow much of what I can see working within EXP as far as just centralized services. And I like the model of having the compliance in each province and how you've kind of created economies of scale there. It's good. I mean, that's where I think the future of it is. And I think if I was starting, if EXP had existed in 2008 when I started Vantage West Realty, this probably wouldn't be a Vantage West Realty, but I'm happy that I've created the brand, and I think there's brand equity there. And yeah, I mean, I think the future's for sure digital. I think you guys you're on the right track without a doubt. So,
because there's some people on the calls that maybe have thought of independence, or maybe have been at other brokerages or whatever. What are the pros that you liked about the independent, and like having your own independent brokerage versus maybe associating yourself with like a Remax or a Royal LePage or something that's maybe a little bit more established and known? Like, why did you go down the independent path?
Candidly, I didn't have a choice. I had a little infraction in 2007 where I put a house under contract accidentally with two different buyers. And so there was a bit of a thing. I had a 30-day suspension, and Remax gave me the old So and I was kind of nuclear at the time just because there was a bit of press around that. So I had no choice but to start my own brokerage. Best thing I ever did. So glad that it happened. But candidly, that was the impetus for me going independent at that time. I had to create a place to work. Having said that, the pros of being independent is total flexibility and freedom to do and design the model that we wanted to design. There's obviously no royalties. At the same time, you've got expenses you wouldn't have if you tuck into a brand like EXP. For example, I have a $100,000 salary to a managing broker. I hold a managing broker's license, but that's not my natural gifting. So I've hired someone who's gifted at that to do that. I have the license because I never want to be over a barrel, but I don't fulfill that role. So therefore, there's a $100K expense there. You've got review engagements from with an accountant, to audit your trust accounts and all of those things. So, going independent, if you're going to be small, you have to take those additional costs into consideration, and it's going to be 10 times what your split to EXP would be. So, you have to have a vision for your independent brokerage, probably that's bigger than being small for you to justify that added expense. So I like the fact that I can build this brand equity in Vantage West. You'll notice I'm not the AJ Hazzi team. I'm Vantage West Realty, and what Vantage has a vertical integration now, Vantage Mortgage, Vantage Property Management. It's becoming a brand, and my intention is to nationalize that brand. And so I like what being independent allows me to do from a vision standpoint, but your vision has to be big enough to justify that, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
No.
Because here's the other thing, right? Like if anything goes wrong, you're held accountable, right? A little mistake happens, your managing broker makes a mistake, an agent makes a mistake, you're basically getting double the liability, right? Because you've got the agents and also the brokerage that are liable, correct?
The vicarious liability. Yeah. I've had 2 late deposit infractions, and they sound so benign, like where a deposit, and how many times you find real estate agents have a deal in their car for 2 extra days. But if that deal is not in your brokerage hands and the deposit in your hands within 24 hours of the deal being written, you're in breach. And all it takes is another real estate agent to make that complaint, which has happened twice over the last 3,000 transactions we've been doing. But both those times, I ended up getting a fine, signed a consent order, and those things go up in lights, right? And they hurt their reputation. They give that little reputational hit. And so, yeah, being vicariously liable for, a bunch of salespeople who are inherently not always the best detail people, that's a scary proposition for sure.
You did an interesting move. You have a property management division that holds the same name as your brokerage, right? Vantage West. Mm-hmm. Going back in time with what you know now, would you still have the same name, or would you have it completely different? Because, we both know that tenants can be a little bit difficult once they've had to be evicted from a property. And so that can cause some complaints. Any thoughts on that? I've always been curious. I've never actually asked you that particular question, but I want to today.
Yeah, it's a good question. And you definitely have to be mindful of the reputation. Somehow, by the grace of God, we still have a 5-star rating on Google, even despite that being available to tenants if they want to complain. We take major steps to try to mitigate those issues with tenants and try to break that combative relationship or adversarial relationship that typically exists between tenant and landlord. We try to, empower these tenants. We've got programs where the reason why I like it is if you're catching people at that stage, right? Eventually, a large percentage of these people want to get their foot on the property ladder, right? And so you indoctrinate them in the brand at an earlier stage. They graduate through 2 successful leases with Vantage, and then now they want to step in, and it's an easy segue into working with our sales team. So the vision for me was to be able to kind of give them a brand experience as a tenant that would segue into them becoming clients on the sales side. So that was why I kept the name the same. I just wanted to create that mind share with them. Yeah. It hasn't bit me in the ass yet, but definitely the potential is there.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's good. Thank you for sharing that. So AJ, I mean, you mentioned you're spending, now keep in mind, AJ's brokerage is doing like 12 million GCI a year now.
Well, if we stay on $1 million a month,
that's insane.
Yeah, we try to reinvest 10% of the gross back into marketing. It's pretty.
You spend $100,000 a month on marketing, roughly, right now at the moment. So where are you investing? Where are the areas that you are seeing the highest return on your investment right now?
Well, Google PPC is our best return on ad spend, without a doubt. So, we've ramped up Google. Facebook, we find them to be earlier cycle leads, but I think the ROI will be there in the, as we incubate and keep those leads nurtured. But the outdoor advertising, the radio, the television, the billboards combined, those tend to be like an accelerator to the other display ads in the PPC. So we find that by having a presence on the radio, by having a presence on the TV, billboards, et cetera, it gives that credibility. I think there's a psychological thing for people. They think, well, if they can afford TV, then they're probably legit, right? I think it's a legitimizer. And so, and that happens subconsciously. And so they're more likely to click on a banner ad on Facebook or on our, on the Google display network that we're advertising on, right? It makes them more likely to click on that. So I think it reduces our cost per click there. So those would be the major ones that we're spending money on. But we also put out a magazine with Canadian Real Estate Wealth. There's a significant budget that goes into print still, not our mainstay by any means, but and then obviously we're in that 10% marketing is the video production. So for our luxury listings and things like that, we're spending a decent chunk of change to put out these lifestyle videos as well, which are landing us more luxury business, so they're worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. And if you guys haven't checked out AJ's videos, you do some great, like you actually have my favorite market stat videos. You probably don't even know that, but I'm a secret admirer of your market stat videos that you put out there. And I've actually shared them with people. I'm like, hey, here's a guy that does a really good market stat video. So if you guys haven't checked it out, check out AJ Hazzi on Facebook, Instagram as well. But your market stat videos to me are my favorite that I've seen out there. So kudos to you.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. You guys sometimes just replicate what you're seeing out there, make it your own, but steal ideas. I'm sure you took that idea from someone else and made it your own. And that's kind of how we grow, right?
We call it R&D, rip off and duplicate.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing I wanted to ask you is you have an ISA team. So I've actually increased my ISA division to 4 agents. I have always made our ISAs pretty much since almost year 1 licensed. Are your ISAs licensed as well? If so, talk about that.
Well, for us, they have to be, like in operating in British Columbia, and I think in most provinces, if you look at the rules, the act of prospecting, that activity is a licensed activity. And if you get secret shopped, or if somebody has a recorded call of somebody unlicensed having a prospecting conversation, you're toast. And so I like it I think it's an advantage. It's really hard to recruit and retain that person, which kind of builds a moat around your business. Because if anybody could hire an ISA, then everybody would. If it was easy, you'd have competition, and that obviously would cannibalize your business. So I like it. It's just, it takes a little bit more intention to design a to design a role that is attractive to somebody, because calling all day is not typically most people's idea of a good time. And then, so you have to design it in a way where they have flexibility in their time, and they have a pretty substantial income that they can make. Like all of our ISAs are gearing to make 6-figure net, and they don't have the stress of the home inspection that's killing the deal, or the clients that are freaking out because they're going to be homeless and all that stuff. Like they don't deal with any of that. They just handle the optimistic portion of like helping people decide what their next home might look like, or talking about a consultation on what their house might be worth in today's market, right? That's always a little bit more of a happy time than the stress of it. So they get the low stress, they get the 6-figure income, and they get to design their own schedule. But they have to be licensed. So to answer your question, for us, the licensing is mandatory.
Nice. So that's good. So we agree on that. The other thing we agree on is I think you need to really look after them, give them the ability to earn a good income. They're a key role in our system, and I think they're a key role in your system too, right? Like they're the first point of contact for a lot of the leads. How do you keep your agents involved with prospecting? Because that's something that we've been working on. Obviously, we have them really work their sphere of influence. That's a big area that we want them really bringing in business that way. We want them to, obviously build their referral business, but we actually have them go in and work some of the, leads that have been in our database for a week or 2 weeks where we haven't been able to make contact with the front line. Mm-hmm. Do you have any sort of systems around that or expectations that you guys have created for your agents?
We've created a lead pond, or we call it Shark Tank, which is a pool of leads that haven't been contacted yet or haven't haven't been contacted in the last 30 days by an ISA. And these guys can plug into the Mojo triple line dialer at any point and just start firing through these leads. And if they want to make 10 connects, that they've got a spare hour, they can go in there and they can do that. In all honesty, though, they don't really take the initiative to do that very often, but that's there for them if they want to. What I've found is working well right now is giving them really simple, highly leveraged things that they can do. So, for example, the 8-word email. So what I found is that each of one of our agents tends to have about 200 to 300 kind of leads that were given to them by the ISA, and brakes got pumped at some point, and now they're sort of stacking up. I could go into Follow Up Boss and I can see that they haven't contacted 200 of those 300 in the last 90 days, and there's no next action booked on there. And that's frustrating for me as a team leader to see that. So what I'm trying to do is shore that up by saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to do a bomb video, right? And it's going to say, here's the exact script, go record it and send it out to those 300 people. Or here's an 8-word email, which is, are you still intending to move in 2021? ? That's it. Send the email to those 300 people, right? And the response rate's really good, but it's highly leveraged. These guys spend 10 minutes, touch 300 people, and they're always surprised, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got 15 responses from that, and 4 of them are active leads, and I booked 2 appointments, and like, yeah, of course. So the highly leveraged stuff, I'm finding there's uptake on that more so than because they're spoiled. You give them ISA appointments, nobody wants to go work a cold lead. They want the gravy, the low-hanging fruit, and that's fine. So you got to give them easy, actionable things they can do to move the needle quickly.
When it comes to hiring, what's the thing that you've learned, hiring? Because I think that's something that everybody struggles with. A lot of people struggle with finding the right talent. That's something that we spend a lot of time trying to help coach them through. And I kind of have some key things that I believe in, but I'm curious, what are kind of the things that you look for when you're looking for talent for your group?
Yeah, so this is only recently, but we've started in the interview process probing for coachability. So you can do a role play with somebody, and obviously they've never done it before. So there's going to be things you can do to point out where they could have improved, right? And so then you give them a few nuggets and then ask them to redo it. And if they can retain some of those nuggets, and depending on their response, depending on, like, you can gauge whether they're truly coachable. Are they appreciative of the advice, or do they get down on themselves because they think you're, dumping on their skill set or whatever the case is? So we look for coachability. And then the other thing that I think is a huge predictor of success is past success. So I don't care if they was successful in real estate before, but did they play varsity football? Did they, were they the captain of their rowing team at some point? Were they the top salesperson over at Cintas? Like, did they do something at some point in their life where they elevated themselves to the top of something? I think that's a key thing. So, I look at the people who have really been successful in our system, and they all have that common denominator, which was they have a past high performance, but they have a high standard for themselves. So coachability and that high standard tend to be the 1-2 punch that gives us that really nice confidence that these people are going to be a fit and be successful.
And that's like so on point, guys. Past success in whatever they've done is so key, because that's the standard. I think to myself, any role that I've ever done in my life, it didn't matter if I was 16 at McDonald's, I wanted to be the fastest burger maker. And it killed me that I was second fastest, because there's a manager who'd been there 20 years and she could make them faster than me. I tried to compete with her head to head, but like, that was a standard in my head. No matter what the job was, I wanted to be the best. And so that's something that I look for. Another thing that I've looked for, AJ, is I actually look for people that have been kicked in the ass by life a little bit, And so sometimes people that have been through the school of hard knocks and been able to like bounce back, and maybe they've been through some adversities, I feel like they're a little tougher. There's just like a level of toughness that they bring to life. If they've had a silver spoon upbringing and things have been quite easy for them, they tend to be a little soft when you get some of the ups and downs of real estate, which happens to everybody. That's been something that you found too?
Absolutely. We actually started testing for, it's called AQ, adversity quotient. So there's this Dr. Paul Stoltz that created a simple test to actually figure out, if you take a hit, how far does that reach into your life? Like, if you wake up in the morning and you see an email from a client that, they bought a home through someone else, does that affect you till you have your second coffee, till lunch? Is the day ruined? Do you have to go, sit down? Like it tries to determine the overall power and the length of time, the duration that when you take a hit, how long does it take you to get back up? And so that adversity quotient is something that we test for. It's one of our final steps in the process. But we do ask questions like to your point is, can you give us an example of, at some point when you turned lemons into lemonade, or where you, you took a hit and had to get back up? Do you have a good example of that? And I like to hear those sort of overcoming stories. We look for those in the first interview for sure.
That's awesome. So let's open it up to some questions. Let's get a little bit of a Q&A here. So one person said, where do you find your ISAs?
We run ads on Indeed.
Okay, so ads on Indeed. For us, we do the same, but we actually look through our sphere of influence as well. What I find is I usually know someone who has the skill set that I'm looking for. And if they have the right attitude, mindset, work ethic, to me, those are people that I'll kind of approach. And I constantly have little seeds planted. And
another one that we're just started doing is Sales Navigator through LinkedIn. If you can pick, like we found that Shaw Cable, for example, the guys that worked in the Shaw system tend to be pretty good on the phone. They were selling cable packages over the phone, but they were doing it with a high level of oversight. So there was systems, there's KPIs, they're used to that. And so we found that those guys were a good sort of ground for us, poaching ground for us. So you can go right up through LinkedIn. You can find people who work at Shaw with a specific, sales role, and you could start direct messaging them, letting them know, hey, have you ever thought about real estate? I think you'd be great. Right?
That's interesting because Jamie, who's our head ISA, he worked at Shaw Cable, was one of the top salespeople in there. And then his brother Freddie, who also works with us now, he also used to work at Shaw at some point. So interesting that you just mentioned that. Totally. Do you do any geographic farming?
No, not to say that it doesn't work. It's just we don't. But I think it's a great. I think you can do it digitally now too, right? With postal codes and geo farming. So I think a combination of like actual old school mail outs plus a geo farm, that 1-2 punch could be very effective.
Yep. And it'd be something you have to run for 12 months, I think, right, AJ, just to really get the ROI on that.
I've yet to find a campaign that just from the minute you hit go is effective. It takes frequency. Yeah. And that frequency, I mean, I guess if you're going to mail a postcard every week, you could accelerate the frequency to maybe 12 weeks, but they're going to need to see that postcard 12, 15 times before there's going to be a response rate that's worth talking about.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. Let's open it up. Anybody that's on the Zoom call, what kind of questions you guys have? I mean, there's some team leaders on here like Ben and Corey and Carrie and people that are, in the process. So love to hear what your kind of questions are. Again, AJ has built a monster business, doing really, really well, has a lot of years of experience. And so I have a huge amount of respect for what he's built. So definitely somebody worth asking good questions for, guys.
So I kind of got late to the call, but I know I got one initial question just off the top of my head is, when you're very first, like I got 3 new agents on my team, and setting those standards from the start, like how do you set standards from the start that they buy into? They see that it's like, this is the way we do things, because they kind of know no one's been here before. Like I could sit there and tell them this is the way we do things, but I'm having a struggle with like them realizing these are the standards we have for the team. I clearly laid it out, but then they're just not following it. Type of situation.
Do you mind if I ask, when you say standards, do you mean standard of production, or do you mean standard of like protocol and how they handle the leads?
Activity. So we measure like our back end. We have activities that's expected of them, like times they're going to be calling and working and texting and emailing, and a expectation for number of calls in a day, conversations, or appointments. One of those 3 is where I'm looking at their activity levels that just aren't being there. And that's what I'm struggling with the most right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, setting expectations in the beginning, when you first bring these guys on what's expected of them, having them obviously sign an independent contractor agreement that lays that out, and having a weekly check-in with them where, you're holding them accountable. are sort of three cornerstone pieces, but I think it goes deeper than that. I think what's important as a team leader is you need to understand the why behind what these people are trying to do. So I do a 10-year vision for them, right? And so when they start on our team, I say, you give me 10 years, I'll make you into a multimillionaire. And then usually they're like, really? You say, yeah. What could your life look like in 10 years from now? If everything goes perfectly, like, how do you see yourself in 10 years? What's your net worth? What's your house look like? What are you driving? How much dough have you got invested? Where are you at? Right. And this is usually the first time they've ever thought of that. And so it's a cool exercise for them to kind of expand their mind and really just dream. And then I do is I reverse engineer it from there. So if they want to be worth $3 million and be making $500,000 a year, and they're starting from scratch, I kind of show them what a trajectory could look like. And once we've figured out that, they set a goal around what they want to accomplish in the short term. So, we live inside of a 12-week year. So they tell us, okay, over the next 12 weeks, here's what I want to accomplish. And I'm like, okay, well, why? What's driving? What's that short term, that white hot why? What's driving you right now? Oh, I got to pay off my truck, or I really want to get an investment property, or I really want to buy my first home, or I want to pay my mom's mortgage off, whatever it is. And so once I know what that is, then I say, okay, how much dough do we need to generate in order to do that? And then we figure that out. And then I say, okay, well, what do you think your activity input's going to need to be in order to hit that? How do you make sure this is as good as done? Right? It's kind of like that Grant Cardone 10X. It's like, okay, you could maybe do it with 50 calls, but you for sure would hit it with 500, right? And then get them to take ownership of it and connect it to something that matters to them. And then I found that once it's connected, then you get real traction, where it's not like the boss is telling me I got to make 50 calls. It's no, you told yourself, you told me that you wanted to do this. And we sat down together and figured out that this amount of activity was going to get you there. So you're failing yourself. You're not failing me. Our business will be fine whether you make the calls or not. This is about you.
Love that. I think that's super helpful. Peer-to-peer accountability also can work really well. So like one of the things that we do is like our morning huddles and our evening huddles, where we kind of keep each other connected. And part of that is like we set our intentions for the day, and then we share where we hit numbers wise for the day, our win of the day. And that's been hugely beneficial for us, especially last year when the pandemic hit and nobody knew what the heck was going to happen. We just stayed focused on what we can control, which was our activities and our output, and came up with a peer-to-peer accountability plan where we would all hold each other accountable to hitting those daily goals and only focus on what we could control, which was our actions. And by staying in that action mode, we were able to have our best year ever last year too. So it's good advice there, AJ. What other questions do people have?
Hey, AJ, John Carroll here. Thanks for being on the call. Take a lot of value out of it. Question: when you brought on that partner in 2010 or so, you said it kind of rocketed your business in a great way. And you talked about processes that you put in place that you kind of weren't seeing. What are some of the processes, and how did you implement those? And what did he kind of share with you to kind of rocket fuel you, to put you in that right direction?
Yeah, great question. First thing was an 80-hour training indoctrination for all of our agents on effective communication, buyer scripts, seller scripts, buyer presentation, seller presentation, a sales process that they could follow. Our sales process goes from the initial meeting where we sign a buyer's agency agreement to booking. In that meeting, you book the market education, which is going out and looking at properties, not for the sake of buying. And then you graduate them to showings. And then from showings, there's a tournament style on the showings that leads you to an offer. This sales process, right? And so then you've got, like I say, bringing in the buyer's presentations. We had no buyer's presentations before. We had no effective communication training. So these guys knew how to take an inbound call or make an outbound call. Most people flub the call when someone calls in about a property. They don't know how to deal with it. So when we actually spent the time to make sure everybody on the team had that same baseline, that was like the first big shift for us. And then implementing the tracking system. So again, I think people are caught on, and CRMs now do a great job of tracking for you some of the KPIs. But at that time, building a spreadsheet, and it was called our scorecard, and tracking every single KPI that mattered, that was totally foreign to me at the time too, because again, we were just winging it based on our natural salesmanship. and doing lots of business and making money. So didn't think we really needed to be tracking these things. But when you do it at a team-wide level and you're trying to create scale, you need to have that tracking. So, training and tracking were the two big pieces that Michael put into my business that put us in a good place to blow up. And then after that, it was a recruiting system that we built, which was an event style recruiting. So rather than me getting pulled out on these one-to-one coffee meetings where people would basically interview me, what can you do for me type of a thing, where that's what most people with a real estate license want to know, what's your split? How many leads am I going to get? All those things. We switched it and flipped the script. We started doing info nights. We'd pack 12 to 15 people in our boardroom. I would do a presentation on our model. And then at the end of it, I would say, this is where I open it up for questions. Most people want to know what the catch is. And they all laugh and go, yeah, what's the catch? It sounds pretty good. I say, well, the catch is this: we're going to hire one person in this room. I can't hire all of you. All of you could get hired tomorrow at Royal LePage. One person here maybe could start on this team if they're fit for the values. If you'd like to start an application, here's the application package, go ahead and start. But we flipped it on them. And when I started doing that, we were getting better applicants, and they came with a totally different attitude. They were like, wow, thanks for selecting me, right? I appreciate this opportunity. Completely different than, I'll join your team if you sharpen your pencil, right? And that's kind of how it used to be, where everybody wanted to negotiate on the way in. How big's my office going to be? How many leads am I going to get? Right. So those three things were the big ahas. And then there's been, hundreds of other things that have been layered on, but those are the cornerstones, John.
What's funny is most agents are unconscious competent, AJ. So like a lot of the high producers, and you're in coaching now, right? So you're going to find this out. Most high producers are unconscious competent. And you probably were at this phase at some point in your life too, where you're successful probably because of your natural abilities, you're a natural communicator. But once you became very conscious of like everything in a process of what you were doing and being able to coach people to that, I guarantee you that was a huge point where you were able to scale your business. Because I know for us, that was like, for me to get out of production, I had to have those systems in play. And I'll be honest, we're always in beta mode. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but like we're always in beta mode, which means we're always looking at our systems and processes and looking to evolve them and make them better. So I don't think we're ever not going to be in beta mode. I don't think we're ever going to be in a position where like we've got it all figured out. We're always making little tweaks. We don't revamp the whole thing, but we make tweaks to our model. And so one of the things that I've been obsessed with for the last couple of weeks, and it was really interesting hearing your buyer process, is almost identical to what I've been mapping out for the ideal buyer process, AJ. And I'd love to jump on a one-on-one with you soon and talk about those processes. But you talked about like the exploratory tour. You used a different word for it, but it's basically that, where before clients even write an offer, they're out looking at inventory and getting a sense of where things are at, right? You talked about like the importance of the consultation. These are things that if you can teach your agents to do that, they're going to convert at a much higher level because they're learning best practices. And it drives me absolutely bananas right now how many agents are literally showing up at a house, and that's when they try and build rapport. If I'm trying to look at a house with my wife and you're trying to build rapport and talk to us at the same time, we're not on the same frequency. You're not creating a world-class experience here, guys. And then if we end up writing an offer on one of the first properties we see, but we've had no context for the market, don't be surprised when you get buyer's remorse. Like that's a common thing that happens. But if you follow a world-class process like what AJ has and what we have, and you actually instill that, you're not going to have that problem because your clients have already prepared themselves. Another bad habit, AJ, and you tell me your opinion on this, right, that I'm seeing right now, is people are like, well, it takes 2 or 3 offers for people to learn. If you're writing an offer for a client and they're not even able to be competitive because you haven't set them up with your process, you need to look in the mirror, guys. You need to look in the mirror. The client's not the problem. It's your process is the problem. And I'm just going to tell you the honest truth. AJ, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, 100% on that. I mean, there's going to be times where clients are going to have to write a couple of times in order to be successful when it's this competitive, but you need to be setting them up to be successful from day one. And that happens at that initial consultation where you explain agency to them, you explain your service. Once they've agreed they want you to go to work for them, you give them a dose of reality. You say, here's the lay of the land right now. Here's a couple stories I can tell you about clients I've worked with in the past, here's where they fell down, and we don't want you to make that mistake. Or here's a client that I was recently successful with, and this is what we had to do in order to be successful. I find stories are what sell. So you give people, real-time stories of both success and failure, so that they go, okay, I get that. That resonates. Once you explain to somebody that was in their shoes, give them a story, but you got to set them up so they understand what it takes to get a property. We have this whole, I actually just put out a video on setting yourself up for success as a buyer. I haven't released it yet, but I just shot it in the basement last night. And it talks about, you got to make sure that you're ready to rock in terms of like your pre-approval certificate is good to go. So you got to let these guys know 100% you need to have a pre-approval certificate. And we're actually exploring the idea of a guaranteed offer. Like we have a guaranteed sale program where if we don't sell it, we'll buy it. I'm actually thinking about creating a program where we guarantee our buyer will close based on financing. Like we guarantee their financing. So I'm working on that. But the point of my comment here is they need to understand the financing component. They need to be in drive-by mode. Your agents can waste a ton of time taking people to properties that don't match what they're looking for. So they need to go and drive to the house really quick and determine that it works based on its outward appearance. So they need to be trained to do that so that you're not doing a bunch of unnecessary showings. And then they need to understand that given the current climate, they're very likely going to have to put their best foot forward, which is going to involve as clean of an offer as we can do. And it's going to involve you guys stepping up price-wise in order to be able to do it. And so it's setting those expectations, making sure that they understand the lay of the land before you waste your time. Because I don't think in any way, shape, or form that you want the market to be what's teaching your clients. You need to teach them.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that is by them being able to have context as well, right? If you do a good exploratory tour, then I can go back and say, well, AJ, remember that house that had the purple kitchen and it had this shag carpet? Well, that sold for $683. Remember the one that had the really nice granite countertops, but had the little postage stamped lot? That sold for $720. So the more things that they can visually see themselves that they've experienced, the better that they're going to be able to form a decision and be able to competitively offer. But again, my question would be, you should never write an offer for a client that isn't well prepared, ever. If you're about to write an offer and you don't really know for sure that your clients are dialed in and that you've prepared them, you need to like slow the process down, get them in some other properties and actually get back to your process. And these are things that we work on and I'm coaching a lot of you guys on right now. AJ, I know you do the same thing. So, but systems. Just remember that if anything that you guys are going to get working with me this year is I'm going to be focusing on systems and practicing those so that you're blue in the face, so that when the other side of this market happens, which AJ, we know that the other side of this market is going to be sellers stubborn because they won't move on their price. And then it's going to be skilled based agents that are going to be able to sell properties on the listing side. Because right now it doesn't take any skill to list a property and sell it, but it's going to take a lot of skill on the other side. And then buyers are going to be thinking, well, the market's going to drop. So they're going to be in that paralysis mode. So it's going to take more skills and a good process to get people off the fence. And so this is why, it's so important that you guys are reevaluating your systems and processes, just like I'm doing in my own business right now. How can I make our agents better? How can I be a little bit more competitive in this market? So these are the things that I'm doing. And I'm sure, AJ, you probably do the same thing. How often do you guys relook at your systems and processes as a company?
Every week. I mean, we subscribe to the idea of Kaizen, which is just slow, steady improvement over time. And so every sales meeting that we have on Tuesday, we talk about, how can we get a little bit better? Where is there a breakdown potentially? What challenges are we facing? How can we systemize it to improve? One of the things that came out of one of those meetings recently is market education, which is our exploratory tour, like you mentioned, was getting cumbersome because all of the properties had offers on them. And so a lot of these people didn't really want the showing. And so for that reason, they started doing digital market education. So it was actually using Matterport tours. They would come, they'd find 4 or 5 properties and ones that were under contract at the moment and say, here's 4 or 5 properties in real time this is what somebody has paid. Here's what their list price was. It's gone over list, and let's look around the house. And so they're doing, and we'll see how effective this is. This is kind of in beta right now, but doing those exploratory sessions over a 1-hour Zoom session where we do a screen share on take Matterport tours of homes that are either active, sold, or under contract, and to give these guys a frame of reference, because it's all about context, as you say. I don't know if it's as effective as getting out there and seeing it and touching it, but we're trying to come up with a plan that's maybe a little more accessible for people who are out of town, who maybe who don't want to fly in just to look at houses that are sold, that kind of thing. But in order to get someone from out of town in a place where they're ready to write an offer sight unseen, they need that context, right? So this is how we're filling that gap. And then we're doing video tours of properties for people, FaceTime, or using a WhatsApp video tour, and getting people the ability to to see inside the home and write offer sight unseen. So that's one of the evolutions that's come from.
That's awesome. AJ, I mean, I'm gonna be reaching out to you, and we're gonna be doing a lot more masterminding, just because I've got lots of stuff that I want to cover with you and bounce off of you, and I'm sure you've got some things you probably want to get from me too. So I think collaboration again is a big thing. Just because AJ is another coach and successful agent I have no issue bringing people on that are smarter than me in areas of the business and have done better than me. It's okay, because that's how we all learn, right? The more you put yourself in rooms with people that are excelling and smarter than you in areas, the more you grow. And so for me, I come at this with no ego, and I'm always looking to be in those rooms where I'm not the smartest guy. So AJ, thanks for being on here today and sharing openly. I love it. Appreciate it. If anybody ever has any questions for you, AJ, what's a good way for them to connect with you?
Best way actually is DM me through at VW Academy on Instagram, or follow that account, VW Academy. I'd love to connect with you there. And thanks for having me, Jason. I mean, you mentioned being the smartest guy in the room. I think you still were the smartest guy in the room today. I've learned lots from you already in the short amount of time that we've got to spend together. And I think you've got a great group of people here, and I love the opportunity to add value any way I can. But I'm really looking forward to connecting with you, because I know there's some great nuggets I can steal from you.
Cool. Well, let's keep collaborating. And of course, I'll bring those great ideas to you guys as well. That's what our whole thing is all about. So have an amazing day, everybody. AJ, thank you again. And if you guys need anything, you guys can reach out to me anytime. You've got my Calendly link. Shoot me a private message. I'm always happy to help and serve. And tomorrow I've got an awesome training session that I'm putting on live free for everybody, but we're going to go through pre-qualifying at a world-class level. That's another area right now that I feel like a lot of agents are missing the boat on. And so stay tuned. That'll be 1 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow. Thanks, AJ. Bye, everybody.
Bye now. Thanks again.
Thank you.